Dream of the Red Chamber Chapter 94.
The situation starts with a group of young female nuns and Taoists,
Right.
and they are brought into the Grandview Garden under the belief that they're being prepped for palace duty. Serving the emperor's household would be a massive, life-altering, upward mobility move for these young women.
Oh, the socioeconomic stakes for palace duty were astronomical. Being selected meant your whole family might be elevated.
Wow, really?
The whole family. Oh, definitely. Your financial future was secure, and you were operating adjacent to the ultimate power center of the empire. So these young women arrive expecting the absolute highest honor.
But that is not what happens.
No, not at all. Instead, they are essentially detained by a high-ranking manager in the household named Laida.
And Laida, she doesn't even lock him up out of malice, right? It's just out of sheer bureaucratic inertia.
Exactly. Classic middle management apathy.
He detains them, provides basic rations, and tells them absolutely nothing about why they are being held captive.
Meanwhile, the patriarch of the family, the ultimate CEO, Jade, is entirely unavailable. He is occupied with official provincial budget check.
Which sounds boring, but it's actually a huge deal.
Oh, it is. To put that in context, provincial audits in this era were literal life-and-death administrative tasks.
Because you're dealing with the emperor's money.
Precisely. If a discrepancy was found in the imperial budget, entire families could be exiled or even executed. So Jia Zheng is dealing with macro-level existential threats, leaving a massive vacuum at the top of the household.
Which means a brewing scandal just falls right into the lap of middle management.
As it always does.
Right. There is an internal crisis involving a young man of the family, Jia Kan, and an anonymous, highly accusatory placard, basically a whistleblowing poster that has appeared, detailing some severe misconduct.
And Jilian, acting as the middleman, is forced to handle it. And reading his thought process here, it is just pure, unfiltered corporate survivalism. He doesn't want the liability.
No one wants to be the guy holding the bag when the CEO comes back.
Exactly. He is terrified of stepping out of line and drawing Jia Zheng's ire. The hierarchy enforces a culture of fear, where taking initiative is actually far more dangerous than passing the buck.
Yeah, because if Jilian handles this quietly and leaves no trace, the CEO might later discover the cover-up and accuse him of complicity.
He'd be fired, or worse.
So I'm assuming his next move is to go to the board of directors, basically the matriarch, Lady Wang, to secure a signature. He wants her to make the ruling so he can wash his hands of the entire affair.
That is precisely what he does. He actively seeks insulation. He presents the problem to Lady Wang, who is the ultimate authority on domestic matters.
And her response is just a masterclass in pragmatic crisis management, but it's cloaked in deep religious morality.
It's a brilliant PR spin.
Considering she needs to mitigate a major PR disaster, my guess is she just pays these young nuns off, signs an NDA equivalent, and kicks them out the back door.
She does exactly that, but notice how she frames it for the record.
Right.
She orders Jilian to send the girls back to their hometowns, give them their identification documents, give them travel money, and hire a boat to send them away.
Sounds generous so far.
But she adds a critical caveat. She insists they must not be forced to secularize, meaning they shouldn't be forced to break their religious vows, and they absolutely must not be sold to official matchmakers.
Yeah, she explicitly says selling them to matchmakers is cruel because the matchmakers will just sell them for profit, not care if they live or die.
Right.
It sounds incredibly merciful on the surface. She's citing Buddhist morality to avoid bad karma.
It sounds merciful until you analyze the actual outcome of her directive. By insisting they be shipped back to their hometowns immediately, with no transition plan and no localized support network, she is effectively disappearing the problem.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. She even uses the phrase, "These things can't be kept around for a single moment."
Wow. These things. That really strips away the veneer of spiritual compassion right there.
It does. That is a PR director holding a hazardous waste bag. She is mitigating both spiritual risk and reputational risk in one sweeping move.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this scenario exposes how power really operates within a closed system. Mercy, the context of an absolute hierarchy, rarely has anything to do with justice for the individuals involved.
No, it is about efficient problem disposal. The system protects the system, first and foremost.
Yeah, Jilian gets his head of legal to sign off on the severance package so the company stays out of the Wall Street Journal. And the offending employee, Ji Qin, gets his security badge deactivated.
Lady Wang banishes him from the inner household entirely, only allowing him back for mandatory corporate events like meter sacrifices.
It is a surgical removal of the liability.
And the young nuns, meanwhile, are left entirely adrift. They have zero agency in this process. They were brought in as props, locked up like inventory, and shipped off based on a 5-minute conversation.
Just a quick chat between a terrified manager and a matriarch who just wanted a clean ledger. It's brutal.
It is. So upper management has cleanly swept their external PR scandal under the rug. But the tension doesn't dissipate. It just trickles downward.
Right, because while the C-suite is insulated, the middle-tier workers, the maids who actually keep this sprawling estate functioning, are drowning in their own anxieties.
The macro-level crisis is resolved, but the micro-level anxieties are constant, which shifts our focus to the second major dynamic in the source material, the marriage market, and the profound emotional labor of the maids who navigate it.
Let's zoom in on a maid named Ziwan. She serves a young woman named Baoyu, who's currently bedridden, recovering from an illness.
And Zihuan overhears a conversation where a senior maid, Yuan Yang, is complaining about servants from a rival family, the Fu family.
The Fu family is aggressively pitching their daughter, Fu Qifang, as a match for Baoyu, who is basically the golden child and heir to the Jia household.
And the specific attributes they use to market her are incredibly revealing about the nature of aristocratic marriage. They aren't leading with romance.
No, not at all. They praise her beauty, but they immediately follow it up by bragging about her advanced math skills, her exceptional writing abilities, her strict filial piety toward elders, and her diplomatic kindness to servants.
They are presenting a resume for a chief operating officer.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
Marriage at this echelon of society is a corporate merger. The new bride will eventually be responsible for managing vast budgets, overseeing hundreds of staff members, and navigating the treacherous political waters of the elder generation.
Which means the maids are constantly acting as corporate espionage agents. They're evaluating the market.
Information in the Grandview Garden doesn't flow through official memos, It flows through the whisper network.
The water cooler gossip.
Exactly. The maids chatting during their downtime, complaining about pushy salespeople from the Fu family, serves as the primary intelligence apparatus of the estate.
But wait, let me push back on this dynamic for a second. If Yuan Yang, a highly respected senior maid, is visibly annoyed by these constant aggressive sales pitches, why does grandmother Jia, the ultimate undisputed matriarch, continue to entertain them?
That's a great question.
And why does Baoyu, the heir, seem to enjoy listening to them?
For grandmother Jia, it is a matter of profound ego reinforcement. Having prominent external families desperately pitching their highly qualified daughters to her grandson is deeply flattering.
Ah, so it's a status symbol.
It publicly validates her family's supreme status. It is the social equivalent of a university advertising its microscopic acceptance rate. It proves their exclusivity.
Okay, that makes sense for the grandmother. But what about Baoyu? He doesn't strike me as someone who wants a CEO for a wife.
He doesn't. For Baoyu, this dynamic actually exposes his fatal flaw. He is endlessly captivated by novelty.
Shiny object syndrome.
Exactly. He doesn't necessarily want to marry Fu Qifang, but he is enamored with the idea of a new, talented, interesting woman existing in his orbit. He collects fascinations.
And that specific psychological trait is exactly what terrorizes Ziwan. Because Ziwan's mistress, Dayu, is deeply, genuinely in love with Baoyu.
And Ziwan watches Baoyu's wandering attention and explicitly notes that he loves whoever he sees.
The psychological toll this takes on Ziwan is just immense. She is suffering from severe secondary anxiety.
Well, in this rigid hierarchy, a maid does not have an independent trajectory. Her survival, her status, her physical comfort, and her ultimate happiness are entirely tethered to her mistress's success.
Right, if Dayu secures the marriage to the boss's son, Ziwan automatically becomes a high-ranking manager in the new administration.
But if Dayu is cast aside for someone with better math skills and a wealthier family, Ziwan's future is completely precarious. She could be sold off, demoted to manual labor, or worse.
So Ziwan internalizes all the systemic pressure. She analyzes the political maneuvering, the aggressive external sales pitches, Baoyu's fickleness, the sheer wealth of the rival families, and she just hits a wall of profound burnout.
She realizes she's playing a high-stakes game where she controls absolutely none of the pieces.
So she makes a really fascinating choice here. She decides to mentally check out. She tells herself to stop worrying about things above her pay grade.
Quiet quitting, basically.
Yes, she resolves to just pour tea, serve Dayu, and let whatever happens, happen.
It is a remarkable historical depiction of a defense mechanism against systemic burnout. She hyper-focuses on micro-level, manageable tasks because the macro-level reality is too terrifying to contemplate.
She is preserving her own sanity by actively detaching from the outcome.
Although her attempt to detach is immediately undermined when she goes back to Dayu's room, and Dayu accidentally reveals that she is secretly tracking the movements of Baoyu's maids.
Baoyu is running a covert counterintelligence operation right from her sickbed.
She is. The anxiety is so pervasive, it saturates the environment. The entire household is vibrating with tension, everyone watching everyone else, waiting for the system to buckle.
And that tension is so thick that it almost feels like the physical environment responds to it.
It does.
The garden itself reflects the internal chaos.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, a literal physical anomaly manifests right in the middle of Baoyu's courtyard, completely defying the laws of nature.
And this anomaly is the third major crisis we're looking at in our source material, the blooming of the dead begonia.
Picture this courtyard. There is a begonia tree that has been completely dead for a year. It is withered, dried up, barren. And suddenly, in the 11th lunar month, the absolute dead of winter, it bursts into splendid, vibrant bloom.
We have to really understand the context of an agrarian, deeply traditional society here. A botanical anomaly of this magnitude is not merely a curiosity. It is a blaring siren.
It's terrifying to them.
Completely. The natural world and the human socio-political world were viewed as inextricably linked.
A macrocosm reflecting the microcosm.
Precisely. If nature breaks its own foundational rules, it signifies that human society is on the precipice of either a miraculous event or a devastating collapse. The natural order is mirroring the human disruption.
So the entire female leadership of the household gathers in the courtyard to observe this impossible blooming tree. And this is where the text turns into a psychological thriller, really.
Because this tree acts as a literal Rorschach test for the family's collective psyche. Every character interprets the omen based on their own internal fears and political positions.
Let's examine how they project their internal states onto this botanical glitch. The establishment arrives first. Grandmother Jia and Lady Wang look at the blooming dead tree and instantly rationalize it.
They claim it's just a natural anomaly caused by a warm little spring weather pattern.
Nothing to see here, folks.
It is the reflexive response of entrenched management. Deny the disruption. Maintain the status quo at all costs. If they acknowledge the tree as a supernatural omen, they must implicitly acknowledge that the foundation of their household is unstable.
So denial is their primary governance strategy.
Exactly.
Then you have Li Wan, a conservative widow whose entire life relies on the stability of the air. She looks at it and declares, "It's a good omen for Baoyu. A happy event is coming."
She literally wills the anomaly into a positive forecast. She projects her desperate need for a secure future onto the disruption.
But then we get access to the internal monologue of Tanshin, one of the most brilliantly analytical younger women in the family. She doesn't speak her mind out loud, but internally she is horrified.
She thinks, this is a terrible omen. Plants know their seasons. Blooming out of time means demons or disaster.
Her exact thought is, those who follow the natural order prosper. Those who defy it perish. That gave me chills.
Tanchun is the unflinching realist here. She understands system dynamics. A system that suddenly defies its own foundational rules is a system actively in the process of collapsing.
A tree blooming in the dead of winter is unnatural, and unnatural deviations are inherently dangerous.
But she is politically astute enough to know that voicing this terror out loud in front of management would be career suicide. So she stays quiet.
But Dayu, who is still desperately fighting for her position to marry Baoyu, steps forward. And she delivers a piece of rhetorical spin that would make a modern political operative jealous.
She cites a historical literary precedent, the Tian brothers and the Jing tree.
Remind me, what is that legend about?
The legend of the Tian brothers is deeply ingrained in the cultural consciousness. 3 brothers were planning to divide their household and go their separate ways. Suddenly, their family's Jing tree withered and died.
Oh, so the tree reacted to their disunity.
Exactly. The brothers realized that their disunity had severed the life force of the household. They repented, vowed to stay together, and miraculously, the tree bloomed again.
So it's a foundational myth about family unity resurrecting dead things. Dayu takes this legend and masterfully applies it to Baoyu. She says, look, Baoyu has been studying so diligently. He is bringing such intellectual glory to the family that the tree is simply responding to his immense virtue.
And grandmother Jia, predictably, eats this up. Dayu's maneuvering is brilliant. She uses a high-level literary reference to flatter both the ultimate matriarch and the heir.
Proving she's smart enough to be the COO.
Exactly. She proves her intellectual superiority to the rival families while simultaneously neutralizing the existential threat of the omen. She transmutes a potential disaster into a PR victory for Baoyu.
But the PR spin doesn't work on everyone. Enter Jia, the paranoid, older male relative. He takes one look at the blooming dead tree and says, "It's a demon. Chop it down."
She represents the brute force reactionary approach to systemic anomalies. If you don't understand the glitch, destroy it before it destroys you.
I have to admit, I completely relate to Jia in this moment. If I can use a modern analogy, imagine I wake up and my laptop is turning itself on. It's bypassing my passwords, opening secure programs, and executing code on its own.
Right. You wouldn't celebrate that.
I don't gather my family around it. I don't write a poem about how it's a good omen that my hard drive is working so hard. I rip the battery out. I disconnect the router.
You quarantine the device.
Yes. She might be crude, but isn't he the only person in the entire courtyard demonstrating actual, practical threat assessment protocols?
That is a highly accurate comparison. She recognizes the malware. He sees a breach in the system's logic and wants to sever the connection. However, he is immediately overruled by his brother, Jia Zheng.
Ah, the CEO finally makes an appearance.
He does. And Jia Zheng deploys a radically different philosophy. He looks at the anomaly and drops this incredibly dense line. To see the strange and not consider it strange defeats the strange.
And then he orders everyone to just ignore it. Wait, I need an I'm 5 on this. What does that actually mean? Is he just telling them to look the other way?
Not exactly. This is a classic Neo-Confucian approach to the supernatural, and it's really about the mechanics of power. The underlying philosophical belief is that anomalies, demons, or supernatural glitches feed on human attention.
Feed on attention, like an internet troll.
Exactly like an internet troll. Emotion, whether it is awe, terror, or reverence, gives the anomaly power over your mind and your environment.
So intellectual suppression acts as a firewall against the panic.
Precisely. If you react, you validate the disruption. If you refuse to engage with it, if you treat it with profound, impenetrable indifference, you starve it of energy. You neutralize its power by refusing to let it alter your internal state.
That is wild.
Yeah.
So we have the CEO enforcing intellectual suppression, the paranoid uncle wanting to destroy the malware, the realist secretly predicting total collapse, and the PR team spinning it into a victory.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the actions of Wan Shifeng. She is the ruthless, brilliant operational manager of the household, and she isn't even in the courtyard. She is bedridden with a severe illness.
But even from her sickbed, she seizes control of the narrative. Her understanding of institutional psychology is just unmatched. What is her directive?
She sends her maids out with a massive strip of red silk, and she orders them to wrap the gleaming dead begonia tree in this red silk.
Wow.
In this culture, red is the undeniable color of celebration, of weddings, of ultimate good fortune. By hanging red silk on the anomaly, she is literally dressing up a terrifying glitch in the uniform of a mandatory celebration.
She institutionalizes the narrative. By physically marking the tree as a positive event, she forces a consensus.
Once the red silk is draped, no one can publicly state that the tree is a bad omen without directly insulting the management and disrupting the forced joy.
It's the ultimate corporate gaslighting. Management realizes the quarterly numbers are catastrophic, so they force everyone to wear party hats and eat cake in the break room to celebrate exciting new restructuring opportunities.
You are structurally, socially obligated to be thrilled about the impending disaster.
Grandmother Jia leans entirely into this forced consensus. She formally declares the blooming tree a wonderful omen, orders a grand feast to be immediately set up right there in the courtyard, and commands the young men of the family to write poetry celebrating the flower.
They're essentially playing the violin while the Titanic takes on water.
Perfect analogy. Baoyu writes an elaborate poem about longevity. A marginalized relative, Jia Huan, writes a clumsy literal poem that everyone politely ignores. And Jia Lan writes an elegant piece about resilience.
The act of writing poetry in this moment is a performance of normalcy. It is a ritual designed to reassure the participants that the system is functioning, the family remains highly cultured, and the universe is smiling upon them.
It is a desperate attempt to manifest order through art.
But the universe doesn't care about the red silk. Management forced this fake celebration to cover up their deep anxiety about the tree. But the universe immediately calls their bluff.
Because while they are busy changing into their lavish party clothes, The actual foundation of their security vanishes.
The foundational system failure occurs. The architecture of control breaks down entirely.
Which brings us to Section 4, the loss of the Jade.
To comprehend the sheer gravity of this event, we have to unpack exactly what this jade represents. According to the foundational lore of the family, Baoyu was miraculously born with a piece of glowing jade resting in his mouth.
Wait, born with it inside his mouth?
Yes, it is the central mythological element of his existence. The jade is inscribed with characters, and it is entirely unique.
Okay, so it's not just a fancy necklace.
Not at all. It is not merely a piece of expensive jewelry. It is understood by everyone in the household to be the physical manifestation of his life force, his divine destiny, and his absolute right to inherit the sprawling estate.
It is his soul, externalized and worn on a necklace. And the catastrophe happens during the mundane transition to the forced celebration.
Right. Baoyu rushes to his room to change into his formal clothes to greet grandmother Jia for the tree viewing party. He takes the jade off and leaves it on a small table.
And when he returns a few moments later, it is completely gone.
The speed with which the atmosphere pivots from forced, manufactured celebration to visceral, existential terror is just breathtaking.
The maids, specifically Grin and Shayu, are the first to realize it's missing, and their panic is absolute. They don't react like they've lost a diamond ring. They react like they've just lost a nuclear launch code.
Because for the maids, the jade is their job security. It is their safety. It is their literal lives.
Everything is tied to that rock.
The logic of the household is brutal. If the jade is lost, Baoyu's life force is threatened. If the golden child's life is threatened, the maids who were specifically employed to protect him become instantly, violently disposable.
Jiren says it out loud. She says if the higher-ups find out the jade is gone, we will be smashed to pieces.
That is the exact translation. Smashed to pieces.
The psychological weight of that phrase is crushing.
When the physical anchor of the entire social order vanishes, the illusion of civilized decorum evaporates instantly. The system immediately devolves into a panicked police state.
Tanshin, the realist who knew the tree was a warning, springs into action. She immediately orders the gates of the garden to be locked. Nobody in, nobody out. A total suffocating lockdown.
Then Li Wan, the conservative widow, who just an hour ago was cheerfully predicting good omens, completely snaps.
She orders a full, aggressive strip search of all the maids and the older women working in the garden.
It is a stunning abandonment of high society manners. The veneer of aristocratic grace is incredibly thin, and it vanishes the second physical survival is threatened.
It's terrifying. You don't ask politely if someone has seen the magical rock. You lock the heavy wooden doors, you tear their clothes off, and you search them.
But amidst this chaotic physical violation, Tanshin intervenes. She stops the panic just long enough to apply pure forensic logic to the crime scene.
Yes. Tanshin points out a crucial flaw in their panic. She says, look, a real thief who stole this object for financial profit wouldn't hide it on their physical person while the entire compound is in a frantic lockdown.
That is an unacceptable level of risk for a petty thief.
Right. But more importantly, she understands the deep economic reality of the stolen object.
Anton recognizes that the jade is essentially unpawnable. It is highly idiosyncratic. Everyone in the capital's upper echelons, including the pawnshop owners, knows exactly what Baoyu's inscribed jade looks like.
If I steal a gold bar, I can melt it down. It loses its identity. But the jade is a rock. You can't melt it. You can't break it into pieces without destroying its immense value.
And if you walk into a pawn shop and hand them the mystical birthstone of the most powerful family in the province, you are instantly identifying yourself as a dead man walking.
Therefore, Tanshin deduces the object was not stolen for financial gain. The thief cannot profit from it. It was taken purely for malice.
It is an act of internal sabotage designed specifically to cause chaos and terror.
It is a masterful piece of deductive reasoning. And based entirely on that logical conclusion, the family's internal security apparatus pivots immediately to scapegoating.
And who is the most logical target for an act of malicious internal sabotage?
The outcast.
Yeah.
The marginalized family member. They target Jia Huan.
Jia Huan is Baoyu's half-brother, the son of a concubine, Zhao Yinyang. He is consistently belittled, pushed to the margins, and deeply resentful of Baoyu's untouchable golden child status.
In a highly structured system facing an inexplicable crisis, the system desperately needs a scapegoat to restore a semblance of order. Jia Huan is the path of least resistance.
He fits the psychological profile of a saboteur perfectly.
So Peng, one of the senior diplomatic managers, is dispatched to interrogate him. She attempts to do it gently. She pulls him aside, away from the screaming crowds, and quietly asks, "Hey, did you happen to see the Jade?"
But her gentle approach fails completely because she is navigating years of built-up resentment. He absolutely explodes.
He turns purple with rage. He screams that he is being actively persecuted, that just because he is the outcast son, everyone automatically assumes he is a criminal.
And the noise draws his mother, Zhao Yinyang, who comes sprinting into the room and escalates the situation into a massive, dramatic spectacle.
She shoves her son forward and screams at the managers, "Just kill us both since you all hate us anyway."
It is the explosive, uncontrollable trauma of individuals who are perpetually assumed guilty by the power structure. Their reaction is visceral.
But functionally, their explosion derails the investigation. It creates so much noise and chaos that it breaks the containment of the crisis.
And right at the peak of this screaming match, the ultimate nightmare scenario unfolds. Lady Wang, the matriarch, walks into the room.
The C-suite has suddenly arrived on the chaotic factory floor. The cover-up has entirely failed.
The crisis is now visible to the highest authority, which means the threat of being smashed to pieces is now imminent for the maids.
And this is where Baoyu does something that is simultaneously incredibly noble and spectacularly foolish. He looks at his maids, he sees them shaking in absolute terror, and he sees his mother's wrath building. So he lies.
He attempts to absorb the systemic shock. He steps in front of the maids and tells his mother, "It's not their fault. I actually lost the Jade days ago when I was traveling outside the compound to visit the South Peace Prince's palace. I must have dropped it on the road."
It is a moment of profound empathy. He is utilizing his immense privilege to try and shield his vulnerable staff.
He is prioritizing their human lives over the magical object that supposedly dictates his destiny. But empathy does not equate to strategic competence.
No, his lie is structurally flawed, and Lady Wang dissects it with the precision of a seasoned prosecutor. She catches him immediately.
She asks him, "If you lost it days ago, outside the house, why didn't you report it immediately?"
And more importantly, she says, "These maids dress you and undress you every single morning and night. If the Jade was missing from your neck for days, how is it logically possible that they didn't notice?"
Checkmate. The lie collapses under basic logistical scrutiny. Baoyu is silenced.
Lady Wang delivers the final verdict. She turns to Huron, the head maid, and issues a terrifying ultimatum. Find the Jade in 3 days or face the consequences.
The 72-hour ticking clock has started.
They have exhausted their rational methodologies. They implemented a physical lockdown. They executed invasive strip searches. They deployed Tan Chun's brilliant economic deduction.
They interrogated the prime suspect. Nothing has yielded the Jade.
Which brings us to the final act. When the architecture of control collapses, when logic fails to produce results, and when desperate people are staring down a 72-hour ticking clock, they abandon reason entirely.
They pivot to the supernatural. The 3-day lockdown is being overseen by the security chief at the gates, a woman known as Lin Zixao's wife.
But she acutely understands that standing at a locked gate will not manifest a missing object. She needs a solution.
So she outsources the problem beyond the heavily fortified walls of the estate. She ventures into the chaotic, unregulated streets of the city to hire a street fortune teller named Lu the Ironmouth.
It is crucial to highlight how thoroughly the internal logic of the grand estate has deteriorated here.
Right, because before Lin even leaves, another character, Xingjian, seriously suggests enlisting a local nun named Baoyu to utilize a spirit writing planchette of Fuji.
Okay, stop right there. What exactly is a spirit writing planchette, and why does she suggest it? The source mentions something about the Jade having a fairy mechanism.
A Fuji is a divination tool, somewhat analogous to a Ouija board, where spirits are believed to guide a suspended stick or planchette to write characters in a tray of sand or ash.
Oh, wow.
Xinghuan suggests this because the Jade isn't just a rock. It is believed to be a piece of a divine entity containing a fairy mechanism or a supernatural consciousness.
So she argues that you can't find a supernatural object using mundane logic. You have to ask the spirit world to locate it.
Precisely.
So they are literally contemplating a seance to find the boss's necklace. But they ultimately go with Lin's plan, bringing in Lu Ironmouth. And the specific methodology he uses is called Chaizi, or measuring characters.
Chaizi is an extraordinarily sophisticated linguistic and divinatory practice deeply embedded in Chinese culture. It relies on the complex, modular nature of written Chinese characters.
How does it work exactly?
The fortune teller takes a single character, often chosen at random or provided by the desperate client, and deconstructs it. They break it apart into its component strokes, radicals, and phonetic elements to derive a hidden prophecy or uncover a concealed truth.
Okay, so Lin Zixiao brings back the reading from Lu Ironmouth. The character that was selected for the divination was Shang, which translates to reward.
Let's meticulously deconstruct the character Shang exactly as Lu Ironmouth does, because the linguistic architecture here is fascinating. He starts at the very top.
Okay.
The uppermost strokes resemble the standalone character for small. Immediately below that is a distinct enclosed box shape, which is the character for mouth.
So Lu tells the terrified maids, "The object you have lost is relatively small, and it can fit inside a human mouth."
Now, remembering the foundational lore that Baoyu was literally born with this jade inside his mouth, the maids hear this and their minds are blown.
They are looking at this street fortune teller like he is an omniscient wizard.
He then moves to analyze the bottom half of the character. The base of Shang is formed by the character Bei, which historically means shell and represents currency or valuables.
Okay, makes sense for a pawn shop context.
Liu points out that if you remove the top strokes from Bei, the remaining structure cannot possibly form the character Jian, which means to see.
Therefore, he concludes, the valuable object is not seen or missing. He is literally reading their exact crisis out of the strokes of a random word.
Then he zooms out to look at the overall structural flow of the top half of the character again. He notes that its silhouette bears a striking resemblance to the character Dang, which is the word for to pawn or pawn shop.
So he provides them with an actionable directive. The object is at a pawn shop. You need to search the local pawn shops.
And then he delivers the absolute clincher, the ultimate hit of hopium.
Give it to me.
He says, if you take the original complete character Shang, meaning to reward, and you simply add the radical for human to the left side of it, it physically transforms into an entirely new character, Zhang, which means to repay or to redeem.
That is just incredible. The linguistic prophecy is flawlessly constructed. The object is small, it fits in a mouth, it's currently missing, it is located in a pawn shop, and a human being will redeem it and return it to you.
The psychological impact on the maids is instantaneous and euphoric. They are thrilled. They immediately start organizing search parties to sweep every pawn shop in the capital.
They have transitioned from paralyzed terror to total unwavering hope.
Which raises a critical analytical question. Why does this character divination work so effectively to calm the panic of the household? Are we supposed to believe that Lu Ironmouth genuinely possessed magical clairvoyance?
I highly doubt a guy working a street corner has crystal ball access to the lost and found of billionaires.
Exactly. It works because it is a masterful deployment of psychological comfort. Lu Ironmouth doesn't use magic. He uses the inherent structure of language to construct a highly plausible, deeply comforting narrative.
The maids were paralyzed by the terror of Lady Wang's deadline and their complete lack of direction.
Lu didn't just give them a story that perfectly mirrored their reality. He gave them a specific, actionable task.
Check the pawn shops.
Yes, it transforms them from helpless, doomed victims waiting for execution into active participants in their own salvation.
The irony here is absolutely staggering to me. Just a few hours prior, Tanshin, arguably the sharpest, most logical mind in the entire compound, used flawless economic deduction to prove that a pawn shop is the last place the Jade could possibly be, because it's too recognizable.
Tanshin's logic was airtight. It was objectively correct based on the economic reality of the object.
But the very second a street fortune teller utters the word pawn shop, based purely on a linguistic pun, a clever wordplay trick, the entire household instantly abandons reason.
They take Tanshin's brilliant deductive logic, throw it in the garbage, and blindly follow the fortune teller. Why? Because he gave them a narrative that ends with them not getting smashed to pieces.
It perfectly illustrates how human beings will violently reject cold, hard logic if that logic offers no hope. In a crisis, we prioritize psychological comfort over objective truth.
We demand a map out of the darkness, and we do not care if that map was drawn by a charlatan as long as it points toward survival.
And we also have to acknowledge the massive structural inversion of class dynamics happening here.
That's a huge shift.
This ultra-elite, isolated family living behind giant walls, managing provincial budgets and navigating imperial politics is now completely 100% reliant on the street smarts and linguistic parlor tricks of a working-class fortune teller.
The rigid hierarchy has entirely collapsed. The masters are dependent on the margins.
Completely. And the collapse doesn't stop there. Because right as the maids are excitedly drawing up plans to search the city's pawn shops based on this divination, the narrative hits us with a massive cliffhanger.
A teenage servant, a footboy named Tea Leaf, who occupies basically the lowest possible rung on the estate's corporate ladder, comes sprinting into the courtyard, clapping his hands and shouting.
The lowest tier of the hierarchy suddenly claims control of the narrative. He shouts at the frantic maids, "Go tell the masters I have great news about the Jade. I know exactly where it is, and you all owe me a massive reward."
It leaves the listener suspended in ambiguity. Did Tea Leaf actually miraculously locate the supernatural object? Or did he simply hear about the massive cash reward that Tanchun had previously offered, and he is now executing a brazen grift?
Is this footboy their savior? Or is he a calculating opportunist taking advantage of a paralyzed, illogical household desperate for good news?
Given Tanchun's earlier explicit warning that people would try to scam them with fake leads just to get the reward money, I certainly wouldn't bet my life on Tea Leaf being a pure hero.
But that is exactly where the source material leaves us, dangling on the precipice of a teenager's unverified claim.